Well, I've got bad news, folks. Fall fishing has officially passed us by. It is in the rearview mirror, and that means that the toughest season to catch a bass, the wintertime, is upon us. Unless you live in Florida, which in that case, your weather is gorgeous. You're having pina coladas by the pool, iguanas roaming the water's edge, catching a 10-pounder every day, high-fiving Roland Martin. I'm just kidding. It's tough for all of us in the wintertime, even for those of y'all in Florida. So in today's video, I'm gonna break down my top winter lures for every single bass fisherman out there. If you've got open water where you live, this video is for you. My name's Tyler, and let's talk about it. Another giant, another giant. Look at that, y'all. I can't believe what I just caught. Yes! Well, what's going on, folks? Welcome back to TRF. My goal on this channel is to help you guys become better bass anglers. So if that's what you're all about, you found the right place. Now, today's video is brought to you by the awesome life jacket company I am partnered with. It's called Bluestorm. They make some awesome auto-inflatable PFDs. They are Coast Guard approved. Bluestorm life jackets not only look awesome, but they keep you safe out on the water. And you can use code MARYTA24 to get 30% off your entire purchase in the month of December. So whether you want one life jacket or 10 life jackets for your whole fleet of summer camp ski instructors. That's a very niche audience. Yeah. That code works for you guys wherever you're shopping from. I'm proud to represent Bluestorm. They're an awesome company that helps me continue to make a living doing this here on YouTube. So with that said, let's hop into winter lures. Now, one of the most common questions I get in my direct messages throughout the winter time is, Tyler, what lures should I be using for pond fishing, kayak, and bass boat in the winter time? Because let me tell you, fishing is tough. And I sympathize with that. Fishing can be very tough in the winter, and not that I don't get the same question about lure selection during the rest of the year, but the same lures that worked so well in April, May, and June, I'm telling you, don't always work the same as far as getting bites and catching fish in the months of November, December, January, and February. So in today's video, I'm gonna talk about my top winter lures for when the water is cold, the air is cold, therefore the fish and us as anglers are cold, and why those lures work so well. So the overall arching theme is gonna be finesse, as usual, for cold winter time, with a few caveats here and there. And the first lure that I feel like you may have seen coming from a mile away, and that is the drop shot. Now, the rest of the lures I'm gonna recommend in this video are really in no particular order in terms of importance and how much I use them, but the drop shot truly is the #1 lure I'm gonna recommend for the winter time, because as far as the finesse category goes, it truly is the most effective and the most versatile lure in that category and catches me a ton of fish, and here's why. Reason #1 is that it is weedless, or at least the way that you rig it, it should be weedless. I'm gonna explain why I prefer a Texas rig weedless rigging over a nose hook later on in this video, but again, that alone makes it super versatile in that you can fish a drop shot in and out of cover, which you can't do with a lot of the other finessey stuff. The drop shot is also both a bottom contact bait, if you want it to be, and an up in the column, if that's the right way to say it, type of bait. So as the weight hits the bottom, the worm, of course, as long as it has some salt in it, will fall to the bottom, therefore making it a bottom contact, very slow-moving bottom lure. But as soon as you lift your rod tip, it brings the lure, the worm in this case, up into the water column, and you can retrieve it like that. And as long as you have your rod tip up, it is up in the column, and when you drop your rod tip, it becomes a bottom contact bait. So whether the fish are eating nose down or they're swimming through the column, the drop shot accomplishes both of those presentations. And lastly, it can present a very small worm, in this case, a 4-inch finesse worm with almost no salt in it, that by itself, trying to cast it even on a spinning rod would be incredibly difficult. So adding a small weight, not actually on the worm itself like you would a Texas rig, I don't know why, I've just found a small pegged Texas rig weight, let's say 16th ounce like this, does not cast as far as the weight 12 inches away on a drop shot leader. Physics probably doesn't help explain that, but I've just found this thing right here, almost like you're throwing one of those baseballs that has the twirly tail behind it. I just feel like I can launch one of those a lot further than I can an actual baseball. Probably not true, but it feels like this thing I can cast really far. That again, a weightless worm like this, you really can't cast that far without the actual drop shot weight. So you can get it further and deeper than a standard weightless worm. Now, what soft plastic am I putting on a drop shot? As you saw here, I have a little finesse worm. I'll talk about this specific worm in a second, but for bait fish focused bass, I'm talking fish that you know are feeding on thread fins or small minnows or blueback herring, a little shad-shaped worm like the Mach schooler here. This is a It says 4-inch, but I mean, this thing really feels like it's smaller than a 4-inch shad shape fluke style bait. It is fantastic on a drop shot for those, again, bait fish focused fish, that if you don't know what they're eating and or you don't have a whole lot of bait fish in your ecosystem, I'm going with one of two worms. The one that I've used for a long time, the majority of my drop shot fishing, has been a straight tail finesse, and that is I think it's a 6-inch, yes, a 6-inch Strike King filler worm. I've loved this worm, it's fantastic. It catches bass in a lot of scenarios. But as you're gonna see here in a second, for pretty clear water, and especially bodies of water that don't have a whole lot of really large fish, I'm gonna go with a slightly smaller worm. This here is the 4-inch, what's it called? It is the Super Finesse the Super Finesse Salt. I guess it has salt. I was wrong. Whatever it's called, whatever it has in it, it is an Elastec material. I believe Strike King has licensed the use of Elastec from whoever invented it. And so we have a little 4-inch worm, but it's incredibly durable. You can stretch it just like this, and I guess...
Nice.
Yeah, it has some salt in it. Probably first time you've seen somebody do that on camera. But if I'm trying to go ultra finesse, I will go with the little 4-inch finesse worm like this. And if I'm just kind of standard fishing, especially in a little dirtier water, I will go with the filler worm. Both of them, surprisingly, or not surprisingly, if you know me, in green pumpkin. And I want to show the rigging real quick on an Elastec style worm because some people have trouble rigging these things. So on my drop shot setup, I have, again, a 16th ounce tungsten drop shot sinker to about a foot, maybe a foot and a half, 2 foot leader, depending on how tall the vegetation is, if it's present in your body of water. And then I think I actually have the exact hook right here. Yes, it is the size 1 VMC red line. I believe this is the Finesse Nico hook, my favorite hook out there for, of course, Nico rigging, but also for drop shot fishing, as it's not quite a wide gap. It's actually a straight shank hook, but it works fantastic for drop shots. So I'm gonna grab my worm right here. I'm gonna go, again, the shank, Taylor, can they see that right there? The shank of that, not the shank, the area before the bait keeper is about 1/3 of an inch. And so I'm gonna go at least 1/3 of an inch on my worm right here, poke it out, and of course that's the easy part. Now threading Elastec material onto that is the hard part, and so I'll kind of pull it up and then just kind of, well, it took one try. I will kind of snap the soft plastic, and usually the momentum of the snap actually gets it up above. I will twist it over and maybe snap it a few times, and I just really gotta try to settle the soft plastic in there. If I can get it all the way above the bait keeper, I will. And then I just hook it on there like a standard Texas rig. If you're in open water, not a whole lot of stuff to get snagged on, you don't even have to put the hook back in the soft plastic, just kind of run it along the top and make sure it is parallel with the worm. But of course, if you have some cover in your body of water, pull it back a little bit, shove it in there. It won't stay in as well as your standard soft plastic worm, but right there, you have a great finesse tactic, and that is the drop shot. Catches fish all over the place this winter, and if you haven't caught one at the pond or lake you fish in a drop shot and it's cold, it's because there's probably not many fish around, because I guarantee you this thing right here is a fish catcher. Give it some time, you'll catch some on it. And to prove that it works, here is a back-to-back-to-back fish catch I had yesterday fishing a winter day at a local pond near my house with the drop shot. Oh my gosh, no way. And I've got one. I got a big one. I got a big one. Wow, I got a big one. Come on now, baby. Get in here. Get in. Yes, sir. Oh, this is fun. This is awesome. And then shake, 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 shake. Oh, never mind. Never mind. Okay, I guess it works. 4-inch finesse worm down the face hole. That's awesome. That felt fishy, but I don't think it was. It is. Oh my goodness. Wow, dude, they are just loaded right here. Healthiest fish yet. Just beautiful. 4-inch finesse worm in the face. We're gonna sell some finesse worms today. 3 fish from one area. Wow. 4 fish. Wow. I cannot believe this, how stacked these fish are in this one area. But a beautiful one, roof of the mouth, exactly where the drop shot hook should get them. Now, if those clips did not convince you to throw a drop shot this winter, I don't know what will. It is an absolute fish catcher, and if you're not throwing it, you are missing out. Now, if you have a certain body of water you fish that has crawfish the fish are feeding up on, the drop shot can work. But a bottom contact finesse lure that I love to throw during the winter, that I know, yes, is wimpy as far as lures are concerned, but it dang works, and that is the Ned rig. Now I can smell the comments. Tyler, there ain't no lure that's wimpy if it helps me catch fish. And you know what? I kind of agree. Even though the Ned rig in its fully formed package is no more than like 2.5 to 3 inches, I still don't like to throw a Ned rig. Maybe it's the southern prideful angler in me that I just want to throw big stuff. But you know what? I've come to love the drop shot, and so the Ned rig, I'm sure, is not far behind. But especially in the winter, I will suck up my pride and throw this thing because it just flat out works, especially, like I said, if you got crawfish in your body of water. Now, a lot of y'all right now are probably saying, Tyler, I've seen others have success on the Ned rig, but myself, I just can't quite figure out what I'm doing wrong with this thing. And the few reasons why are because A, you're probably fishing where there's not many bass, which is a huge problem in general, but B, the problem with the Ned rig is that it's really only applicable in areas that are not snaggy and in areas that have relatively hard bottom and relatively flat bottom. So what I mean by that is that if you throw a Ned rig around grass, can you do it? Yes, you can, but you probably shouldn't because a drop shot, and in my opinion, a shaky head and a Nico rig are probably better in those scenarios as far as staying weedless out of the grass. Could you throw a Ned rig in around wood and trees and laydowns? You could, but again, that would be horrible for your pocketbook because you would lose Ned rig after Ned rig after Ned rig because you're gonna get stuck on the snaggy wood down there on the bottom. So if you have a whole bunch of stuff down there on the bottom in your bodies of water, a Ned rig is probably not the finesse tactic I would recommend to you. But if you have flat bottom, so mud, clay, hard rock, any kind of sand, a Ned rig is fantastic for. And if you've got clean bottom, so if you've got hard mud, but it's mixed with moss and snot grass, a Ned rig is not a good choice. So it doesn't work everywhere, but where it does work, it works extremely well. And the two soft plastics I mostly throw with a Ned rig are going to be the Strike King Ocho, the Ned Ocho, and as the name Ocho would imply, it's actually just an Ocho material. It's kind of the same thickness as the Ocho stick bait. It's got some ribs on there. Does it matter? I really don't think so, but it is a 2 3/4 inch soft plastic. And then if the water's a little bit warmer, so kind of in the 50s, and I'm throwing a Ned rig up until the summertime, so really any other time besides the full-blown winter, harsh winter, I'm gonna throw the Ned Cutter Worm. And as you can see here, it is a little bit thinner than the Ned Ocho is. Totally cylindrical, doesn't have a kind of a beveled look to it, and it actually has a rage tail on the end. And I just found this thing works really well, and again, when the water's warmer and when the fish want a little more action, as you pull it up in the column, of course, it's gonna go and that little tail is gonna do its That was my rage noise. And as far as the actual head weight that I go with, most of the time I will throw an 1/8 ounce head. So here you can actually see, hopefully Taylor can focus on that here. We've got an 1/8 ounce head and a 1/4 ounce, the two main sizes I throw. 1/8 ounce for most pond fishing situations and when I'm fishing less than 10 foot of water, which again is probably most of your residential and farm ponds. But then 1/4 ounce is what I throw in lakes when I'm fishing between 10 to 30, maybe even deeper, just because 1/4 ounce gets down to the bottom a lot faster. Now, how do you rig a Ned rig? Let's show you, because it's really simple. I line up the Ned head with where the worm is going to, where the shank is going to start bending. And then actually, as far as the cutter worm goes, the Ned Ocho, I'll rig it the flat way, not the thick way. And then you'll just rig it nice and straight, poke it out right there, slide it up. And I've done better, but that right there is probably good enough for a Ned rigging. You cast it out there, you kind of shake it slowly back to you, just like a shaky head or a drop shot, but of course it's gonna be on the bottom the whole time. The Outcast Perfect Ned head, my favorite Ned rig head, has this thing sit straight up in the water and on the bottom, and it really entices those bass, especially that are feeding on crawfish. So the Ned rig, fantastic finesse category lure. If you're not throwing it, again, you are missing out unless you don't have the actual facilities to be using it where you fish. Now, moving away from the soft plastics, those are my two favorites for wintertime. We're gonna go with a hard bait, the first of two in this top 5, and that is the suspending jerkbait. Now here soon, I'm gonna be making an updated masterclass video teaching you guys everything you need to know about fishing with a suspending jerkbait, but really all you need to know for right now is that it is a fantastic cold water lure. It really imitates bait fish, especially dying off bait fish, super well. It is erratic, gets a bass's attention, and can be sat in place for, as long as the jerkbait is a good suspending jerkbait, it can be sat in place in the water column for an unlimited amount of time, enticing those bass to finally end up striking it, especially ones that are really slow and lethargic. And the jerkbait is really simple. You cast it out there, you crank a few times to get this thing to its max diving depth, and then you jerk and pause for as long as you want, and then jerk, jerk, pause. You can do 3 of them, you can do 5 of them, but all it takes is a simple stop and go retrieve, and this thing entices bass, like I said, in especially clear water to eat. Now, I didn't catch any on this in the day that I was fishing the drop shot day because the drop shot was just so good, but the one thing I found about this jerkbait is that if you bank fish specifically, you want to throw one that dives no deeper than 5 feet. So I know there's plenty of good suspending jerkbaits out there. I will leave some of my favorites linked down in the video description, as well as all this tackle as usual. But the ones that dive deeper, as in the bill is longer, they're just gonna dig into the bottom and they're gonna kind of become a crankbait at that point. And can that work? It can, but I have found you want it higher up in the water column. At least if the fish are eating a jerkbait that day, they're gonna be water column oriented fish. And so a suspending one that's in the column, not close to the bottom, is gonna be what you want. And so this here is the KVD 100 jerkbait. It is a 2 treble hook jerkbait, relatively easy to throw even though it's pretty light. It has a good weight transfer system on the inside. But I have found recently in a lot of the shallower bodies of water that I fish that a 5-foot deep diving jerkbait just dives a little bit too deep. So I'm actually on the hunt right now to find my new favorite jerkbait for the even shallower water column. Now, a jerkbait that dives 2 to 3 foot, let's say, for example, doesn't really fit in the winter time category as far as the bass fishing book goes. But in a pond like the one I was catching them on a drop shot with, it's 5 to 6 foot deep max in that pond. And so deep, keep this in mind, for the bodies of water you fish, deep is kind of a relative term. And so in that pond, deep, as the deepest, is 6 foot, but in a quarry pond, it could be 25 or 30 foot. And in a big reservoir, it could be 180 feet deep in that body of water. So deep is a relative term. Therefore, a jerkbait that dives 3 foot in a 6-foot pond will get the job done. That is technically a good wintertime jerkbait, even though in a deeper body of water, and again, relative term, that jerkbait would not be good in that scenario. So you really got to find out how deep, using the countdown method, your ponds and lakes that you are fishing. Of course, forward-facing sonar and traditional sonar helps with that if you have it on your boat or your kayak, but you don't need it. Cast something out there, you know how long it takes to sink to the bottom, and you can find out what depth jerkbait makes sense. I always try to keep it kind of in the center of that water column. So if it's 10 feet deep, I keep the jerkbait in 5. If it's 6 feet deep, jerkbait in 3, all the way down to in 20 feet, I'll keep it in 10, but any deeper than that, if the fish is that deep, I'm not throwing a suspending jerkbait. So hopefully that made sense. I rambled a little bit, but the biggest thing I want y'all to know is that depth is a relative term, and the KVD 100 is great for most depth zones. So with the jerkbait done, let's move on to lure number 4 in our winter lures category. Sticking with another hard bait and an even faster moving hard bait, we have the lipless crankbait. Now, why do I choose a lipless crankbait over any other kind of crankbait, both shallow diving, medium diving, and deep diving? And the answer is because a lipless is shallow diving, medium diving, and deep diving. It is the most versatile crankbait, again, because it is the only crankbait, at least to my knowledge, that actually sinks, or at least it's intended to sink. And the bill on the front, on the top of it here, is what causes this thing to actually, I wouldn't even say it causes it to dive. It just causes it to have a side-to-side movement like a crankbait does. But especially a lipless of lighter weights, so 1/4 ounce to 1/2 ounce, can be used in so many different depth zones, which is really what you need in the wintertime, because in the spring, you can pretty much guess the bass are gonna be up shallow, so I can retrieve a shallow diving crankbait. But in the winter, it could be out deep, they could be somewhere in the middle, or it could be a really warm winter day, bringing those fish into shallower water to feed up, getting ready for that pre-spawn and spawn time. And so a lipless is really the only crankbait I'm actually throwing, especially in ponds throughout the wintertime, because of the variability it can be retrieved. Everywhere in the country, from Florida to Texas to the center of the country, Missouri, Kansas, I've caught fish, especially in ponds and shallower bodies of water, on a lipless crankbait. Shad patterns, I think, are best because, again, a lot of our bass are eating shad throughout the winter. But there comes a time, maybe it's because the crawfish are exiting their mud holes down there on the bottom and they are red in color, that a red pattern lipless crankbait works really well, especially around aquatic vegetation. but I feel like that has not really been scientifically proven to be true. I just think bass, for some reason, like the color red when the water is cold, especially in cold, clear water. And so if you're not having any success on a bait fish colored lipless, go ahead and try a red hue. It might just work for you. And for size, again, I know I said the category today was finesse, but I would say the 1/2 ounce red eye shad and most lipless crankbait sizes like this are still a finesse-y type size. I mean, if you compare it to the rigged Ned rig, if you leave out the actual treble hook, the presentation is the exact same size. So I would say a lipless crankbait is still a finesse-y style presentation, especially one that is silent or hardly has any rattles in it at all. I have found a time when the one knocker of these two soft plastics here, my microphone's above me, by the way, the one knocker will get those fish going, but not all the time. A silent works really, really well in cold, clear water. And so if you want to throw a 1/4 ounce, a smaller size one, maybe a 1/4 inch smaller, you can. I would just not throw like a 3/4 ounce lipless crankbait. Can it work in the winter? It can. Most of the time I go with 1/2 ounce or 1/4, and I think this size right here is finesse-y enough. And I feel like this section here has been too short, so here's an awesome lipless crankbait catch I had in Florida in the wintertime.
Got one. Oh, this is big. This is not small. Yeah, I got one. I don't know how big it is though. Holy crap! What the heck? Whoa! Whoa! Oh! Let's go! I've never seen a fish quite that wide. That thing's unbelievable. Oh man. Woo!
And leaving behind the hard baits, we have one more lure, and it's not necessarily one that I've had a whole lot of success with recently in wintertime fishing, especially from the pond, but I have had success from the bass boat, and that is the Shake in the Minnow, Damiki rig, jig head minnow, whatever you want to call it. This thing right here, it catches some dang bass. Now, if you are a bass boat or a kayak owner and you've kept up at all with the advancement in fish finder technology and or you follow the tournament scene as well, the Bassmaster MLF, I guarantee you have come to know this exact bait right here. It's called the jig head minnow. Some of you may hate it, some of you may love it. I kind of fall somewhere in between, where if I'm using forward-facing sonar in the wintertime, I know this lure right here cannot be beat for those suspended bait fish chasing bass. But does it also work in ponds? Well, in my jig head minnow masterclass, I actually proved it can work in ponds in the wintertime, because to be honest, it works in the same places and usually has about the same retrieve speed and the same size as your standard jig head swim bait. So let's say your raid swimmer, your Kitech, for example, that for decades we have cast it out there, let it sink to our desired depth, and then reeled straight back into the boat or straight back to the bank. This thing fits the exact same category, it's just retrieved in a lot different way. You shake it back to you as you're retrieving it back again to the kayak, the boat, or the bank, and it can work for you guys who fish from the bank and ponds. Full transparency, like I said, I have not had much success with this thing in the wintertime from ponds, but really that's because I haven't had much of a chance to. I just started fishing this from the bass boat last winter, and I didn't do much pond fishing in the winter, so I'm really excited this winter in the 200 ponds episodes to at least have this thing tied on in the majority of my fishing days to give it a shot. The drop shot far outshined this thing, even though I tried it on that fishing day that I showed earlier in the video, but there will come a time, again, when they're chasing bait fish and maybe they don't want a loud lipless crankbait, they don't want a bigger suspending jerkbait, that a jig head minnow rocking back and forth as you shake it back to you, especially over a rock and over the edge of grass, could get myself an extra fish, and of course could get you guys some extra fish in the boat or to the bank throughout the day. It is a technique that is absolutely worth learning, even if you don't have forward-facing sonar, because it can work in many avenues that a standard traditional jig head swim bait would work. Now, I'm not going to show how to rig it, I'm not going to show how to retrieve it, because I have an awesome jig head minnow masterclass video that I made last winter. It blew up, probably, at least in my opinion, one of the best ones that teaches this tactic out there. I will have that up here in the corner, and of course my tackle and there it is. The Bluestorm life jacket that I use will be linked down in the video description. If y'all could shop using those links, and like I said, in the entire month of December, Bluestorm's giving y'all a 30% off discount code. My name is Tyler. As always, it is a pleasure, and we'll see y'all next time right here on TRF.